The Feudal Future Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Feudal Future Podcast. I'm Marshall Toplansky.
I'm Joel Kotkin.
And today we are going to have what I think is going to turn to be a rousing session with David Gershwin, who is a public affairs consultant and works a lot with Democratic Party candidates in California, and Sean Steele, who is the GOP committeeman for California. And today we are going to be talking about Governor Newsom and who will replace him. Joel, you want to start us off?
And of course, Governor Newsom is as likely as anyone to become President Newsom. He's got a very good chance. Has the media underestimated Newsom? As you follow how politicians operate, and we had a conversation the other day where you made the point that this guy is not an ideologue, and he's and you say pragmatic, others might say opportunistic. But what's your assessment of his possibility as becoming president?
Right. I mean, we still have a lot more to write in terms of presidential history moving forward. You've got folks like Josh Shapiro.
Right.
You've got folks like J.B. Pritzker. You got Governor Whitmer. But nonetheless, he is certainly in a very, very strong position. He's right now in the futures markets. He is the most popular candidate for presumed Democratic nominee for president. He far exceeds the numbers of Kamala Harris. You're coming from the biggest state in the union. He has a very strong track record of fighting Trump, which is mobilizing Democratic voters. So I think he is in the pole position right now, but recognizing that a lot could change in 2 years.
Well, and Sean, what's your take on all of this?
I almost hate to admit it, but I agree with David. I mean, Newsom was in the toilet just 6 months ago. I mean, he was. You have this problem with what's wrong with California. Everything. From the fires, not rebuilding, from housing, from employment opportunities for young people, for poor education, for urban violence, transgender and sports, ruining girls' sports. I mean, everything, all the 80-20 issues he's upside down on. But this is a Democrat state, has been for a long time. And even though in the last year, and you might correct me on this, David, I'm sure you, and I'd appreciate it, but the Republican Party has actually grown in 100,000 registrations. The Democrats got 15,000. So there's a slight little mark of time. First time I've ever seen numbers like that. But it still is 5.8 million Republicans. It still is 10.5 million Democrats. So there's a lot more of them.
By the way, where do you see those? That's fascinating with those numbers.
Secretary of State just released about 3 weeks ago.
Now, where do you see those changes happening geographically within?
It's across the board. It's not like one little tiny community, just across the board. A lot of Latino areas too, but that's right. But I want to focus on this. Newsom is really smart, and he's got the best hair of any candidate we've seen since Bill Clinton.
Yeah,
so
I'm jealous.
So it's something that is, and so he's rock bottom. Nothing's going well in California, but anti-Trump is a big sales pitch, and he was smart. He's the guy that interviewed Charlie Kirk, and he agreed that transgenders in sports made no sense to him at all. I don't know what he'll say tomorrow. So when you say he has an opportunity, he certainly is an opportunist. He certainly is pragmatic. He certainly enjoys good food. We know that about him. He's an interesting character, but he's decided on a very smart level. And I think in some ways Democrats are genetically superior when it comes to politics in California. And he could just see this in front of him. You get enough Democrats pissed off and angry about Trump, it's going to work. But you needed money. You got the money. Now it's $120 million, and poor Republicans, maybe 50, soaking. So
he's got the war chest.
Yeah, but and he may not even have to spend it all, just keep it for the presidential. So right now he's the hero among the Democrats across the country.
Right, and I think one of the things about Newsom, along with being incredibly bright, he is one of the hardest working elected officials I have ever witnessed. There's someone that I know who worked with him on some of his earlier campaigns and when he was lieutenant governor and was sitting in his office and didn't know that he was in his private office. And he asked, well, when is Gavin supposed to get here? And they said, oh, well, he's behind closed doors. And as he's spoken about many times, he is dyslexic. So he works that much harder to prepare for every single public speech, be it a State of the State speech, be it a stump speech, be it an interview. He outworks anyone. And having worked for politicians before, the one thing that they don't like to do often is practice and prepare, be it a debate or a speech before a Rotary Club. He is the antithesis of that. He will outwork any other Democratic candidate I've seen.
Well, in addition to his work ethic, it seems as though he's getting a little bit of additional momentum from this campaign about Proposition 50 to change the redistricting. So is that working for him? How does that impact him?
Absolutely.
And how does it impact the opposition to him?
He gets to raise money. He gets to raise money for that campaign, just like with the recall. Like, bring it on. There's nothing that he likes more than another excuse to get out there, another excuse to be on the air, another excuse to run ads and become the focal point for California Democrats.
And it was a good strategy because they knew from day one it would work. There wasn't like they were kind of guessing and hoping it would work. They understand that the left is in angst. They're angry. They're powerless. They see Trump does something. He might even make a mistake 2 days ago, but then suddenly there's peace in the Middle East. Well, why is Trump doing this? And suddenly it's literally almost every 24-hour cycle, Trump has changed something significant in the world, and they're not used to that, and they're not. And in fact, nobody. And if you're a leftist and you're saying that, my God, his stuff and it might be working, and maybe the economy's good and things are not going to hell, and all the predictions made are showing that these are up stats. And Trump is very much of a pragmatist in himself, in a sense that he's an 80-20 kind of guy. He's not going to take it he doesn't like losers, and he doesn't like unpopular causes. And so it seems to be working. And if I was a leftist, I'd be out of my mind. Well, frankly, it's kind of like the way Republicans were under Biden. You're just out of your mind. What do you do? And so there's an angst that's rising up, that's changing and challenging in a significant way their worldview of how life should be. So suddenly Jew haters like AOC, Mondavi, and others are becoming increasingly more powerful in the Democrat Party. Newsom's job is kind of nuance and balance. That, no, I really don't hate Jews. I like a lot of them. The Middle East, I can work it out. But he's got to be to balance that out so that the far left, which is dominating big precincts in the Democrat Party, is to try to be the anti-Trump. And as long as he's the anti-Trump and against troops in cities and what's going on with ICE, he may be able to prevail and sort of cut an intellectual, emotional connection with the far left in his party. That's his biggest problem.
If that's the litmus test for the Democratic Party, to be the anti-Trump and to be against troops in cities, look what's going to happen in 2026.
But that's not enough.
Things will be boding well for Democrats.
That's not enough. I don't like troops in cities, but Washington, D.C. is a big success. No question about it. People don't like it. They just want to live in a dangerous urban environment and get carjacked in the middle of the day. So D.C.'s a success. Memphis, Tennessee is weird. I wouldn't send troops. I don't like, why do you send federal troops anywhere? It's hugely popular in a Democrat area because it's safe in Memphis. Now, when you have a political organized opposition like cities that are badly run, San Francisco, what decent person would spend the night in San Francisco? Chicago, are you kidding?
I've been there recently. It is not all bad. It's not that it's cracked up to be, and it's getting better. Absolutely.
Chicago's a different story.
Right.
Now, those are dangerous, nasty places, and so you're on your own.
It's dangerous if you spill cappuccino on yourself on Market Street. That's about the most danger you're going to experience in San Francisco.
You walk down Market Street?
Yes, it's fine.
It does bring up an interesting...
Did you wear boots?
I did not.
Okay. Oh, we can't even go there. It does bring up an interesting question, though, because there's Newsom the Californian,
right,
and being viewed within the lenses that we have on as Californians, right, and Newsom the American writ large. How do you reconcile the two of those? How much of the Californian reputation is either going to stick to him in a bad way, especially on your boots in San Francisco, or in how much of it will allow him to be viewed in a positive way by the larger group?
I think he is in a position to actually learn more about what people are going through in other states. I think he's going to focus on, as any smart politician will, on what the major issues are in the battlegrounds. I think he has highly transferable skills. So I think he is in a position to get that same kind of appeal towards his base as he has done successfully, without question, in California.
So he'll find his base, whatever that is.
Absolutely. He's going to have, like I said, he's going to have competition for sure. And he may not be the nominee when all is said and done.
All quite correct, except what kind of competition does he have? Pittsburgh, what a mess he is. Every time he shows up on TV, he loses. Appeal, what are you? AOC, she's not smart, and she's considered.
I strongly disagree.
But by the way,
you may not like her, but she's
we were
pretty
talking
bright
about this earlier,
and very
There's
media savvy.
A new YouGov poll came out yesterday showing that her approval rating apparently is 8 points higher than Trump's.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a surprising thing.
I love polls. How often have they been wrong about Trump? I mean, if you're going to bet on polls against Trump, you're going to be a very poor person.
Right. We've got a ways to go, right? So
does Newsom have a problem with how do you deal with as a party has been moving to the left?
Yeah.
If you've got Mondami is in many ways the best known Democrat in the country.
Yeah.
If he wins mayor in New York, which he will. How does Newsom maneuver between the far left, which is rising in his party, and what you would think would be kind of his natural constituency, which would be the more middle of the road? He's got a lot of ties with the oligarchs. How does he negotiate that?
The abundance perspective, right? That idea that the tech people are talking about, which is that, hey, we can, especially with AI, kind of grow the pool.
Right.
I think he has the capability to frame issues in a positive way and actually be hopeful and express to our better selves what we should be as a state, what we should be as a country. And I think that has a very broad-based appeal. I mean, I think we're so used to negative politics that actually might be a refreshing tone that he can take. And I think that will be transferable. Yeah,
but what does he say when, of course, they would never have me there, but if I say, well, you're talking about this great progressive model, you're in a state with the most billionaires in the world and the highest percentage of people living in poverty. I mean, I guess if you've, as long as you're giving an interview on NPR and CNN, they won't ask you those questions. Is that something that he can escape from?
I believe so. I believe he can talk and speak to the fact that he's working to fix those inequities. He wants a rising tide to lift all boats, that he wants to see success on both sides of the aisle in terms of no matter what your political perspective is, that he's a leader for all Californians, not just blue Californians. So I think he's able to navigate that very well.
Yeah, the only trouble is the facts don't bear that out. He's not. He's underwater, and the polling showed that. But he's underwater with independents, and that's the second biggest party in California. He's certainly underwater with Republicans. So he's highly polarizing.
Yeah, his ratings are not great.
Yeah. Now among Democrats, he's done what he needed to do, and they're climbing onto his bandwagon that he created. And it's working beautifully, and it's going to make him a hero across the country. But 2 years is a very long time, and we'll see. If Trump continues being successful, there's a lot of ifs. If the economy's good, if there's peace in Ukraine, all these ifs we have no control, no way of even knowing how that's going to turn out. It may not. His time may pass. Here's his other great problem, and the fact that he's out of a job in 2026. So he's no longer governor. Well, so he's like an ex-governor. Well, it works sometimes. We saw Bill Clinton out of nowhere do it. Jimmy Carter, I think he was an ex-governor. Ronald Reagan. So it can work. And he does have a personality that is very appealing. He's the kind of guy you like to hang out with. Frankly, I find him, Jerry Brown, you couldn't hang out with him because he just was antisocial and anti-people.
See, I like Jerry Brown, but I'm antisocial too.
Right.
So.
No.
And he had one of the most insular gubernatorial stabs of any California governor.
Right. But you didn't want to, you couldn't hang out with him because he basically didn't like humans. And I totally understand that about Jerry. There's a lot of flaws that humans have. Gavin will hang out with anybody. He'll have a drag queen over here and Charlie Kirk over there, and let's have a party and get together. So he is appealing, but can he run on that? And who are the other Democrats that are emerging? We don't even know about. Typically, that's what we see. We see some new governor, some new exciting personality that's getting things done. But I think his biggest problem, I don't know if you agree with me, I think it's the far left. And they're growing, they're angry, they're smart, they're militant. They even got a Senate candidate in the state of Maine that's got a Nazi tattoo on his chest,
that's an
and
emblem
they're still
of
defending
honor.
him. I mean, and that
Bernie Sanders is defending him.
and
Yeah.
well, more than Bernie and that crowd. Right. And what's interesting about that symbol, I don't know these things, but his former chief of staff just wrote a piece in the last. She resigned, and she says he knows what he was wearing for the last 20 years because he's a military historian fan.
And
he knows it
Totenkopf,
represented
yes.
the SS group, particularly it was in charge of the concentration camps. I mean, how specific can you get? It wasn't just ordinary SS, the worst of the worst, but it was the SS group in charge of concentration camps. So that tells me a lot about the left and where it's going. And by the way, I'd like to tell you, our hands are clean. We've got nasty little anti-Semitic groups within the right.
Yes.
I've been very concerned about. I've been resisting, fighting, exposing, frankly, expelling. I won't tolerate it. Unfortunately, the Democrats don't have that attitude. They're afraid of this. At your last Democrat convention, Jews were attacked on the floor. Yeah. They were attacked because they're Jews. That is Gavin's problem. That's just symbolic. But of all the other left-wing things, we don't like police. Screw girls in athletics. Crazy. Tax everybody out of existence. It's urban crime. What crime? What are we talking about? Illegal aliens that have criminal records. Why are you being so mean to them? These are issues that I don't see Newsom overcoming because for 7 years he's been governor and he's been an unsuccessful governor.
Well, let me add, it's funny you were talking about who on the Democrat side is going to be facing him in competition. He's in the next presidential election, he's going to be running against somebody other than Trump. Obviously, he's going to be trying to run against Trump.
Don't tell that to Trump.
Exactly.
Right.
He's got plans.
Don't tell that to the Constitution.
But let's say he runs against Vance, right, which is probably the most likely scenario.
He's presumptive,
right? So, is there a difference there in Gavin versus JD, as opposed to Gavin versus Donald?
Well, of course there is, but right now his best play is to run against the guy that all the Democrats hate.
Right,
and I think he can say, "I'm going to clean up the mess that Trump created." Right. I don't know if he can build the East Wing again. What a travesty that is. But that's for another podcast.
We just need more. These weighted balls that are crushing the building and to rebuild. This is called
he is a builder. Don the builder.
Creative destruction.
There you go.
Funny. No, but do you think that
you're not going to get a ticket to the ballroom? I can tell you that right now, David.
I'm not a billionaire.
You're off the list.
I'm off the list immediately. I don't qualify.
Do you think Vance will be as good a campaigner?
That's a good question. I'm skeptical about Vance's ability. He's really never had to campaign outside of his home state of Ohio. A vice presidential candidate, for all intents and purposes, does not campaign. People are not voting for a vice presidential candidate. So he had not a lot of tasks in that election other than to sit there and look obedient. And that's what he's continued to do throughout his vice presidency.
He is a smart and articulate guy.
I happen to know him reasonably well. He's extremely smart, but I think, last time we met, we got into a fight because I said, JD, you're running as a Trump person. I know that that's not who you really are. And you're really not
on the air.
No, it was in the hallway in the hotel in Washington. And when I realized he's super ambitious, that the ambition overwhelms everything else. whether or not, I mean, frankly, I find neither of them would be particularly attractive candidates. I think Rubio would be a much better.
Well, I was going to mention,
Rubio is the second
Yeah.
highest
Yeah.
likely candidate according to the polling markets. And just really quick, back to the fact of your conversation with JD. I think you see that speaking of boots, the boot licking you
Yes.
see from JD. I think that manifested itself no better way than in that Oval Office meeting with Zelensky.
Oh,
He
yeah.
looked so stilted and forced. It's like, you are doing this for an audience of one.
Right.
And I think that's all that's driving him. And it's absolutely transparent.
well, we know that sometimes vice presidential candidates can have problems. Just ask Kamala.
Right.
And I think that there's an inherent handicap because basically presidential elections, and I heard this recently, so it's not my original idea, it's based on hope. Future opportunity by elections, like we're having on 26, is based on anger. And I like that dichotomy. So I think JD is going to have to show some amazing transformational skills of being forward-looking than past-looking. Marco Rubio, I'm surprised, but he's getting the good guy stuff. He's the peacemaker. He's the one that's showing up, and he's extremely loyal, but he's not as close to the president physically as JD.
And is also much better counter-programming against a Democratic candidate. Hispanic from Florida,
Yeah.
a successful Secretary of State.
Yeah.
And also, this is
But
just.
those are the two that we know about. I
Right.
mean,
Right,
who
right,
knows?
right.
It's a deep bench both ways. Well, I don't know about your side, but, but it's a deep bench with senators that are emerging, some interesting governors that we haven't even seen yet. And so that's what's fascinating. We like to predict the stuff, and in a year from now, we'll be scratching our heads. Why would I even think that? It was so obviously wrong.
But if it's anger, I love your analogy, hope versus anger. So if anger is driving or will be a central theme of the 2028 election,
No, it'd be hope in 28 presidential. Presidential's hope.
okay. Well, where I was going with that is there's a level of sycophancy in this administration that, by the way, I think Marco Rubio does a really good job of kind of toning it down.
Right.
But like, say, Pete Hegseth is an example,
Oh.
right? To what degree is that kind of attitude or behavior pattern going to be a factor in that next election?
I think it's going to be enormous. I mean, after that disaster speech at Quantico on both the president's and Hegseth's part, apparently the top military brass in this country pretty much said to themselves, we're never going to listen to this guy with a straight face ever again. We're never going to take him seriously. And so any hope that Hegseth, I think if there is a cabinet member who goes, it's Hegseth. I think he has the innate ability to trip himself up in some serious ways. So I agree. The sycophancy that we've seen in this administration is through the roof.
But if I want to get,
Yeah, but isn't that is that what you're supposed to do in presidential elections? I mean, you can look at every single president we've had in the past, and if you're not complimenting the president, you're not going to be around really long. And if you show some deviation, your lifetime.
Well,
This has been.
affected Kamala.
But I want you to know right now, and I want the public to be aware of this. I have not bought a Trump watch. So
There you go.
And
did you graduate from Trump?
Dogecoin though, or the Bitcoin?
I don't trust any of that
And
crypto
you didn't
crap.
you didn't graduate from Trump University either.
Well,
but-
you haven't seen my degrees yet.
But what I'm wondering about is, I think Sean's idea that hope, whether it was Reagan, who I'm unfortunately old enough to have covered and actually interviewed. What he was brilliant at was saying this stuff is wrong, but I can bring hope. I think Obama did that. I
Yes,
think
she did. Yes, very
Clinton
good,
did
very
that.
strong.
So the question I have is Newsom has not shown much on what the former President Bush used to call the vision thing. When he starts talking about using this progressive rhetoric, and then you look at what's happened in California, you say, well, it's just BS. Do you think that he's capable of coming up with that kind of positive message that Sean thinks will be critical in 28?
Absolutely. No, and I somewhat disagree. I think that when Newsom is talking about the future, he takes a very positive view, and he's able to fly at 35,000 feet and actually try to be inspirational to a broad swath of voters, and not just in a partisan way, but in a more global way. And I think you hear those themes quite a bit. It's probably not, it's not in the sound bites that you hear all the time, but I think he will be, I think the more you hear from him in the next several months, he'll be moving in that direction. You're going to hear him speak about larger issues in a more positive way.
Oh, I think he can absolutely nail it. And so,
Really?
Oh, yeah. Look, yeah. The opportunism, his gilded life that he's had, all the big players that have been sponsoring all these years, the fact that he's never had a job in his life, but he is just a media darling. And he just has a natural poise into making people feel good. Now, the trouble is you're going to show the record. And then this nice guy Newsom is going to win every time, despite, he could leave the pestilence and the burning fields, the earthquakes, and the people in the street with wearing tough boots and tin cups. Doesn't matter. I think he's going to be able to win the propaganda war in terms of the Democrats. And who are his competition? I don't see the competition today, but that's the beauty.
Well,
Right.
And the bar is kind of low from the vision thing point of view, right? Because what we've learned over the last, for both Democratic and Republican presidents, is that we used to worry about flip-flopping.
And specifics, right?
There's no such thing as
policy
flip-flopping.
agendas, right?
It's like the world is very transactional.
Are
Right? This is
you,
what-
are you saying that Trump has changed the script on that completely?
That's right.
Well, Trump is a great example of a transactional president,
Right.
Somebody who is very much focused on getting something accomplished, and will say whatever it takes to get that accomplished, even if it's something different than what he said 3 days ago. And so to me, what that says is, well, maybe we don't value the vision thing quite the same as we did before.
It's a consistency thing. I think everybody wants a vision. They want the hope. They want something, and even if it's against objective evidence, and it's almost as bad. That woman there that says that they say is my wife. I didn't kill her. I'm sorry about the blood on my shirt, but he's the kind of guy that can get away with it, right. and not everybody's going to buy it, but there's going to be enough here because he's washing his hands and he got a new shirt. And says, well, I don't know what happened in there. I wasn't around, and everybody knows it's not true.
So in some ways, Newsom is a different version of Trump.
Well, people say that they don't like politicians, but at the end of the day, I think they want to hear good things. They want to be heard. They want to be seen.
Right.
And I think, going back to Mondami really quick, that's something that he does exceptionally well. If you're a young person and you're having trouble paying your rent, and you're having trouble paying the bills, and you have trouble putting food on the table, that speaks to you directly. He understands where you're coming from. He can speak your language, as it were. And I think Newsom has that ability as well. He can say, I've come from a relatively privileged background, and he can be self-deprecating and acknowledge that, and then quickly pivot and talk about the conversations that he has with, real working Californians and what he witnessed throughout the state. He can tell those stories left and right and communicate them well.
Completely right in this. Mondavi, and he's a master. I love those short videos. He's really one of the most attractive politicians I've seen in a while. And just in terms of getting his message out. And then he has a picture with an imam who was part of the World Trade Center first bombing, unindicted conspiracy. He's one of the worst human beings on earth, and he has a picture with him like he's a family friend of some type. So he can be next to a monster. They could have killed a whole bunch of people, but hey, look, it's me. Don't believe what you see, but believe believe my vision. So there's a lot of superstition in politics.
Well, and this vision, just one point I want to make is what's different this time around, well, maybe not this time, but more recently, is the echo chamber of fragmented media. Right. So that Mondami can do what you said, and it doesn't matter because it appeals to the media that his message gets echoed in, and the flip side, right? Yes. So it's a question now of fragmented market segment versus fragmented market segment, and who ends up showing up is really at the polls.
Sure. And also creating your own market segment. I mean, the fact that Newsom started his podcast is no accident. That was a very calculated and I think smart move.
Yes.
I mean, the old school way of thinking would be, I'm going to have that blockbuster interview on 60 Minutes and that's going to change people's minds. If you told me if my options were going on 60 Minutes versus going on Joe Rogan, I'd go on Joe Rogan's show 99 times out of 100 over 60 Minutes. I'm not saying the 60 Minutes isn't useful for a segment of the electorate, and I guess I will count myself as that segment, the older folks. That's not going to reach as many people. That's not going to make as big of an impression. Plus, on a podcast, and this one included, you have a longer runway to get your ideas out. You can be more relaxed. The conversation's more free flowing. And if you are a member of the public and you feel that you don't know someone, you're not going to get to know someone from a 60 Minutes interview, but you're sure as hell going to get to know someone in an hour and a half podcast.
And the other point is the interactivity. You know, when we post a podcast, we get thousands of people commenting on it, right? And Joe Rogan, millions of people comment. When 60 Minutes puts its thing out, their audience talks to itself, but not really in any vivid kind of a way because there's no vehicle to do it.
Right.
Who invented all this? Trump. The counterintuitive Trump found all kinds of alternative medias, and that's conservatives have complained for years, mainstream media, but it's shrinking before our very eyes. I don't know. This would be a study you might know something about, Jill. I think most of the mainstream major legacy newspapers are in bankruptcy, one time or another. The Orange County Register is in its third bankruptcy.
The circulation number, the LA Times used to have a circulation of at least 1 million, and now the numbers are beyond anemic.
I'll give you an example. The Korean Times, the daily Korean Times is 3 times as thick as the LA Times. They're getting the advertising. They have a niche market. They're able to afford it, and they have a vivid, small readership. But if you want to get to the Korean community, don't waste your time with the LA Times.
Let me just before I would like to get at least a little bit on the governor's race, but here's an issue that I'm just wondering what Newsom does. It seems that a core value of the Democratic Party, at least the progressive wing, is anti-Zionism, anti-Israel. I haven't heard much from Newsom on that issue. I mean, it does seem to be a very divisive one.
Right. I think he recognizes that. I don't think there's any rational reason for him to engage deeply on that, knowing that it's a lose-lose proposition for him to get engaged on that. So I think he's going to avoid it as long as he possibly can. Now, recognizing the fact that when it comes to national politics and you're running for president of the United States, foreign affairs becomes a very important part of your plank. However, Americans do not typically vote on foreign affairs as a reason for choosing one candidate over the other, and he recognizes that also.
Right.
And just take another point here. Wouldn't it be amazing if Trump literally solved, nothing's long-term or midterm, but sort of solved the Middle East situation with Gaza and Israel, and it's not an issue in 28, and then it's off the table, and then Newsom doesn't even have to comment on it. I mean,
I think the chance of that happening are slim to none, and slim just left.
Good.
Hamas is already murdering people in the streets, so I think the notion of peace in the Middle East is off the table.
And of course the
good. That's bad news.
The Mandami types are saying, "Oh yeah, they should kill all those people too." Yeah. So it shows us what nice people they're associating with. But anyway, so we have this, I think we've all agreed that Newsom is a formidable candidate, probably the front runner, showed the ability to go all the way. What happens to the state of California? The state has got incredible problems. It's clearly going to elect another Democratic governor. How do you assess where we are with this now?
It looks as though we are still waiting for, and folks have articulated they want to wait until the results of Prop 50 come in after November 4th. But you have 3 unknowns, whether or not they get in or not. One of them is Senator Alex Padilla.
Right.
I think would be a seismic change.
And he would win easily.
You would think. Well,
Yeah.
I would, and he's my former boss, so let me, full disclosure. I wish him the best, and I would love if he were our next governor. No question. Rick Caruso, although it seems more likely that if he chooses to run again, that he would run for mayor of Los Angeles. Although
move.
he's engaging on state issues as well, and I don't think it's beneath him to run for governor of California. And then, as we've seen with his investment in his own expenditures for supporting Prop 50, Tom Steyer, I think, is considering running again, and he doesn't have to assemble much of a campaign. He can draw from his bank account instantaneously with direct deposit. So he's ready to go as well. So those are sort of the three X factors that I see in this race that, frankly, and it's really not that long away. It's only 8 months away, if at least for the primary election.
It's awfully
mind-boggling.
late,
right?
For these big players to show. What happened to Bonta, Attorney General? To me, he was the obvious one, and he's got great name idea. Padilla would be the only serious challenge. I'd like to hear from one expert. Why isn't Bonta in the race, the Attorney General?
If I were him, I'd, again, running for being governor of California. It's an arduous task, right? I think you have to be up for it. Why not establish a track record as Attorney General? And maybe Bonta's calculus is he thinks that Padilla is going to run for governor and win, and then Bonta runs for Senate. Who knows? So I think he has a lot of different off ramps.
That's rational, but I don't understand the Padilla's hesitation. He doesn't have a lot of competition out there, and that hesitation speaks volumes to me. I think, well, if you're not that interested, then we're going to have to another look at Katie. Maybe Katie Porter's got a little more here. Maybe she's not that angry. Maybe they'll give her some meds, and then she won't insult her staff as much.
Padilla just got elected to his first full term as senator, but
the people are calling.
But Padilla also gets a free ride. He does not have to give up his seat to ride. So he is in an enviable position as politicians go
More to lose
run
than to win in a weird way.
Absolutely.
Right?
Even if he loses, he wins. But
so of looking at both the Democratic nominees and the people who might face him on the Republican side, one of the themes that Joel and I have been researching for the last decade is how screwed up the business environment is, how we're chasing the middle class out of California, the housing issues. Are any of these things likely to be addressed by any of these candidates that are coming up?
Well, to the legislature's credit and to Governor Newsom's credit, we've seen some major strides in housing legislation, most notably the passage of SB 79, sponsored by, you may not like it, but the fact of the matter is it's allowing for more construction of housing. It may not be the way you like housing.
Next to mass transit.
Next to mass transit in the state where 3% of the people take mass transit.
So it's only
the areas where people don't want to go.
In the state. But they've chipped away at CEQA. Right. They've made it front and center. There is enormous investment that the state of California is making to help subsidize affordable housing because, frankly, developers have made it very clear that affordable housing doesn't pencil out, and they need that type of
doesn't
subsidy.
Pencil out under the planning regime that the state is actually accelerated by adding extra taxes on areas where people drive, which is the vast majority of the state.
So with that type of momentum, whoever is going to succeed Newsom would be very wise to continue those types of pro-housing policies and pro-quality of life policies that we all strive for. And it may be a heavy lift, don't get me wrong, but I think that's what they will aspire to.
I have such a diametrically different point of view on this, and it's
as you should.
And I appreciate the chance of this dialogue because usually you get 1 or 2 minutes and you only have enough time for insults, and that doesn't solve anything.
We have plenty of time for insults.
We can throw the insults in later too if you want.
The Orange County Sheriff's flew Michelle and I up on some kind of a congressional issue over Orange County, and I saw things that I just couldn't imagine. We talk about this low-income housing, and these are entire city blocks, 5 stories high, as dense as you can put that. I call it Soviet-style housing. Just put them in a big building. Maybe the elevators work, maybe they don't. I think the elevators are better nowadays, but it's compacting human beings. But over Orange County, I saw entire areas where these were being built. It's like cancer cells everywhere. And this was like 4 or 5 years ago. So what Joel predicted years ago, this is a war against the middle class and against the suburbs. And it makes sense for the Democrats on a very pragmatic but evil upheaval level. If they they break the back of the middle class, they break the back of suburban areas, they will be in power for another 100 years because it'll be just nothing but festering Soviet-style housing. And you can't raise children in those buildings. If you do, it's a human rights violation. There's actually human rights investigations in Shanghai and Hong Kong published papers 20 years ago about having people live in 120 square foot with a toilet and a shower above the toilet. And, this is called, it's not housing, it's anti-human. We stopped building. It's 90% of California you can build in. You can't build in most of California. They fettered it off. They have green belts. We could expand in the Antelope Valley. We could expand in the Central Valley, but the laws don't permit that. Legislation 30, 40 years ago by mostly Democrats and some Republicans. So there's no future for the suburbs, and that's pretty well killed. Unlike Texas, where they just keep building more suburbs, and then a few extra suburbs. And so that's a solid middle-class environment for years to come. California is going to have these high-rise, dense in areas, quality of life, low quality of life. Right. Not a good, desirable place to live unless you're 22 years old.
Well,
Right.
I think it's pretty low quality of life if you have people who can't afford to live anywhere and are living on the streets.
And that was
that's
Democrat policies. We've
also,
had that.
But let's also remember that it's not just the housing. Homes are where jobs go to sleep at night. Mm-hmm. And if you want to have the economic stability in California that we all strive for, you have to house your workforce. And you're not and
totally agree.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
Totally the question is in what?
Well, that may not be your flavor of ice cream, but nonetheless, you could. And I think you're seeing more. There's the Tajon Ranch project that you're saying where you're seeing more.
Cut down and reduced,
but it's enormous. It's enormous. It's absolutely enormous.
I think more of those. We need more of those.
The death of the suburbs is greatly exaggerated.
Well, no, it's not at all. Objectively speaking.
Well, first of all, as on a national basis, the suburbs are where all the action is. California, there are some places like the IE, but let me just as
Central Valley too.
As we're rounding around to let's pick on Sean a little bit.
Excellent. I'm used to that. I'm a Republican.
Like shooting fish in a barrel.
Given all the problems that are in California, and with which you could, you can easily, make the case. Why is the Republican Party in California absolutely worthless and is absolutely without any ability to affect much of anything?
You're just trying to hurt my feelings.
Is that enough of an insult for you?
That's right.
I think you could have said it a little bit stronger. Actually, that's what half the Republicans say half the time. What's wrong with our party? What do we? Well, we've had a massive outflow of Republicans. I go to RNC meetings, Republican National Committee meetings, and you're from California, goofy people out there, oh my God, who would want to live there? And I say, my job is to, I have a new realization, my job as an RNC committee, my job is to export Republicans out of California to purple states and then make Texas stronger. So Governor Abbott of Texas made a speech a couple of years ago, RNC, I love Californians because his exit poll shows 2 out of 3 voted for him. And we know that because they're economic and cultural refugees. They can't, and we're finding that mostly younger families that can't find the job their parents had in California. Aerospace is dead, Democrat, ongoing. We had huge, big $100,000 a year jobs in Downey, Norwalk, Long Beach. Those are gone. They're not coming back. And here's the biggest tell of all. Our kids, including mine, cannot afford to buy the house they were born in. And that's because of Democrat policies, anti-housing. Look, if you want a house in California, you need $1 million. So who gets the house? The people that can afford $1 million. So this is unlike Florida, unlike the red states that are growing and prospering. But California is actually regressing on housing. And all those little tricks and ideas, having a bike path direct to the metro station, living in a Soviet-style housing, isn't going to cut it. And the outflow, that's why we're losing congressional districts. That's one good thing. Losing congressional districts, going to find places like Florida and Texas. And so we'll have an outflow population. Millions have moved out of California, not all because they're Republican refugees, but maybe 2/3. I think that's reasonable based upon that one extra service that they've done in Texas. And so we're seeing younger folks move out, retired folks move out that just want to get out of California. And every time I speak to a lot of center-right organizations, and that's one of the questions I ask. How many people know somebody that has moved out of California in the last year? Every hand raises. And so, we got some recalcitrants. I mean, why would my party grow 100,000 when everybody's leaving? going to Texas.
So who is that 100,000?
Right. It can't be young people because the young people are not
yeah.
flocking to the Republican Party.
Well, actually,
Well, no,
males
your
are-
argument is that it's that 20-something crowd that
Males are
is
still
coming
female.
out.
But it's also Hispanic too. And this is the greatest shock to Democrats of all. How can these nice Hispanics we've counted on, they've been our people, we control them, we have these, we have this Hispanic assemblymen everywhere, and yet the Hispanics been moving to the right. And that's something, and not just California, but across the country. Like Texas, they had the redistricting, and they were sued by the ACLU and by LUCA and the NAACP for having more minority districts. So Texas Republicans gave it to them, 5 new Hispanic districts that voted overwhelmingly for Trump. That's one of the great ironies. So they counted on absolutely 100% control of Hispanics. They're losing that slowly, in some cases quickly, and they're also losing it among young black males. So it's exciting to see. But California is a laggard. We used to be the future trend, but now California is a regressive trend.
You don't see the future of California in the fact that you have greater assimilation of the Latino electorate, and the fact that that represents a maturity of that particular segment of the election.
That's a very
It's
good
not
point.
all bad. It's not all bad. It's
good
not
point.
all terrible. There's more gelato shops than ever, so that makes me personally happy. I don't get to practice in Texas as a lawyer, so I have to practice in California. But everybody I know has an idea and a plan on the right, getting the hell out.
Well,
The trouble is the weather's so good. How many people have their beach homes in California but, quote, don't live here?
well, it's like New York with the people living in the pencil
That's right.
towers, and
Yeah.
but they're paying taxes in Florida.
Well,
Or they're owned by LLCs.
well, we're hitting our time limit, so we're going to have to wrap up. But what I find interesting about this is that there is some uncertainty about how the political shifts will affect this next election.
Right.
And you made a really excellent point a second ago about Latinos being more assimilated than before, and in fact, that may mean that become more Republican because they have more of a stake in the economy of the state.
Although I would say that the way ICE is at least being portrayed, and maybe what they're actually doing, is alienating even conservative Hispanics.
Right.
So
and that's the countervailing.
Right.
That's the countervailing side. So I just want to thank both of you for this was a rousing, as
Absolutely.
I predicted,
Thanks
a
for
rousing
having us.
conversation. Thank you so much.
yeah, we
for
should do it
being
after
here.
the election too.
Yeah, let's
Oh
definitely.
yeah, I'll be in a great mood.
If the state's still here for Republicans.
He'll show up and no chortling.
And
I'm not running for election, but I would have an opportunity to run for a new safe Democratic seat.
and thanks for being on the Feudal Future podcast. We
Absolutely.
look forward to having both of them back again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The feudal future.